Right, you bastards, this is Some-Belgian-prepper, and today we're going to talk about survival hacks and tips to stay awake for a longer period of time during certain survival scenarios. But before we start it, if you're interested in detective stories, this is the first part of an 11-part series that I wrote called Bloody Crosses, and it's written in Dutch. So if you're interested, the link will be down in the description. So I probably made a video, I think, about this topic, but that was more in a bug-in scenario tip. But I've experimented more a little bit with these techniques, and it's I will show you now the techniques that really works and the things that you need to avoid to make it even make the situation even worse. So tricks and tips to stay awake from during a survival situation. In what scenarios could this be needed? During a bug out scenario where one person of the group needs to stay awake and keep watch that there is no danger coming into the camp while everybody else is resting. During a bug-in scenario where you think that somebody's going to steal your supplies or something from your fields or your crops, so those things are could happen that you need to stay awake all night to catch the person. It's just like my grandfather. His rabbits got stolen almost every week. So he devised a system where he put a bell to he put a rope to the door of the where the rabbits are, connected to a bell in his bedroom, and that way he caught the thief at night to wake that were all woken him. But that more alarm system, but it's the same thing that you can do to catch some aggressor, robber, thief uh, of your property or during a bug out. Other thing that could happen is if you're in a scenario where you're waiting for rescue teams, but you know they are about to come in 72 hours, like when you're in a plane crash and you know within 72 hours usually rescue groups will find the plane, but you need to stay awake to signal them if you see them far away, so that you not fall asleep and they pass over, and there you go, they will not return back to your point of rescue. So yeah, the items that I'm going to use are things that everybody could get their hands on, because a lot of the things that we think about, like the military, we always think, oh, those guys, they just a matter of willpower. That's not actually exactly true, because a lot of military in almost every time period, every place on earth, in every army, use some sort of stimulants or substance to keep their soldiers awake for longer. So for example, even now in these days, like in the Middle East, like at the fighting at the ES, they used Captagon, which is something that U.S. Air Force pilots use to stay awake and alert for a longer period of time. But those things are hard for civilians to get their hands on. So I'm going to talk about the things that you can do as a civilian. But I'm not a fan of substance. I think if you're dependent on substances, yeah, that's not really good, because you will get dependent on them. So first I'm going to talk about the things you can do without the use of substance. And that is, if you're going to stay awake or be on guard or something, don't do it alone. I know it's perhaps stupid to do a two-person guard while that person could be sleeping and rotate. But if you have to stay awake for longer, this is something handy that probably a lot of military people will know, that if you're on guard and you don't have somebody to talk to make jokes with, to to keep you awake in case you start to doze off, that's that's a more handier way to a more healthier way without substance to keep you awake. Another trick you can use is a trick from snipers to stay awake for 72 hours, and that is fantasy integration, I think is the English name. But the thing is, snipers need to stay a long time in a sitting position, so the problem is they don't have anybody to talk to. They cannot do exercise, because doing exercise during a guard is also a good way to keep you awake, because if you're walking around, you will be less you because your blood is flowing, you will be less nodding off, dozing off, than if you're just sitting on a certain point, bored out of your mind, and starting to doze off. Yeah, keep in movement. Do some push-ups, do some little exercise now and then to keep the blood flowing, and that will also keep you more alert and awake for a longer time. So I was talking about a fantasy integration. So that is something the snipers use. If they have to lay down for a long time in a certain position, it's easy to doze off because they have to stay awake for a long time. They need to focus in case the target comes and they need to take the shot. And yeah, that could be very hard to stay awake and alert. So what they do is they keep imagining their target. They keep playing and fantasizing their target in the sights, and that's something that probably a lot of people also have never noticed about themselves. Imagine you are working something on something that you like to do. Let's say you write a story that you're very into. You are making something or building something, and you are focused on it, and you can do this thing for hours and hours, putting all this working because you're hyper focused. And just it's the same thing with the snipers with their fantasy integration. They are so focused on their task, on their target, that they can stay alert, awake, with and when they get out of that imagining their target, their busyness, they many hours have passed without even realizing. So, and while were still keeping focus on their task, on their target. So that's a way to also to do it. If you're bored, don't think about why am I sitting here? Nothing is going to happen. Imagine there is a danger, there is a target. Keep imagining it over and over again, and that will keep you alert in a way if you need to take watch. So that way you can stay alerter and more longer awake than you would think. So that's another thing you can do. Those were the tricks. Yeah, I talked about the exercise. So those are tricks that you can do without substances. Another thing is get discomfort. What am I talking about discomfort? Well, if you're sitting down on a chair, you're sitting easily, and that's more. If you're sitting warm, that's also a way to doze off. So keep yourself in pain, in not comfortable positions. So do I mean? Put your jacket a little bit open, have a little bit cold, that will keep you awake. Don't sit on a chair, just walk around or lean against something in an uncomfortable way. That the pain and the uncomfort will keep you awake. It will keep you annoyed, and that annoyance will keep you awake. It's not pleasant, but it's a way to do that. Another thing that is from an evil torture method, but it's something that's also sometimes is being used, and that is don't imagine that it's just a stick or something. Don't do this with a pointy stick like this, because you do not, especially in a survival situation, do not want to pierce your throat. But it's just it might sound stupid, but if you got a twig, a branch, or something less sharp than this, you can just put it on top of your collarbone, under your neck, and just keep watch. And from the moment you start to doze off, you will start to doze off. It will start to poke in your throat, and that will keep you awake. From the moment you really doze off, that little pain streak will waken you up again. And yeah, I know it's not the most handiest thing, but it is something that has been done with results to keep somebody awake for a longer time. You can do this with almost anything, as long as it's uncomfortable when your head start to rest with the full weight onto the object between the collarbone and the throat. But like I said, don't do this with a sharp object like this, because it will start. You will get the wood get affected, and in a survival situation, you do not want that. Another thing is, and it is just a simple trick you can also do in daily life if you want to rest or wait for the bus or something else, and you think you will doze off, you will fall asleep. Have your keys in your hands, just like this, and yeah, you can just keep it next to your body. And from the moment you start to doze off, and when you start to get into a real deep sleep, hands will get numb. You will drop your keys, and from the noise, especially it depends on what floor you have. The sound of the noise will waken you up, and you can do it again and repeat. And for a moment you just start to doze off again. You start to wake up. So yeah, that's another trick you can do, and these were all the tricks you can do without the need of substances. Now we're going to talk about the substances, and yeah, the thing about substances, I do not like to use them because I do not want to get dependent on them. I do not want to create a tolerance against them. Like people, especially the first thing that comes to mind is just coffee, caffeine, very simple. But there's one trick to it, and that is uh, use caffeine in small doses. The problem is many people think, I will drink one big cup of coffee or something else with caffeine and just drink it, and then I will be awake for a long time. No, 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 no. That's very bad because you perhaps have large caffeine in one go, but in a long period you will have a bigger crash. So what you do is you just on a regular basis drink a coffee. I would say about every 2-3 hours take a cup of coffee, and it's not only the caffeine that will keep you wake up, but also the watching. How do you say this? The anticipation towards within 15 minutes I can have a new cup of coffee, and also the making of the coffee is a task that will keep like with the snipers I said. So we'll have a task that will keep you awake, alert, a little bit movement because you have to make a warm and heat up the coffee again. So those are things that you need to do in order to have the most benefit from caffeine, like just coffee. Another thing is don't use sugar with your caffeine because sugar has a short energy burst but has a bigger crash. So do not use I would say do not use coffee with sugar, but use something like butter. Yeah, butter. There is something called butter tea from Tibet, and that is a good way to get some caffeine with it. And the butter is a long-lasting energy. Like I said, sugar is a short-lived energy, and you will have a crash very soon. But if you mix a little bit of butter with coffee, the butter will give slower but slower energy through the fats and will give you energy enough to keep awake for a longer time without the crash. So that's another benefit of it. Uh, so yeah, like I said, short take every 2 hours a shot of caffeine, and that's not only for coffee like this instant coffee, but it's also for some other things like this uh, energy drinks. These are two Red Bull and some knockoff energy drink. Uh, what I would advise is get small cans. So don't take these. What are these? Half a liters. These really big Monster and Red Bull cans, but try to get them in small doses. Those very small cans, and just take every hour or every 2 hours just a drink, and instead of having one big can. And I forgot one more thing about the use of caffeine. Caffeine is most effective if you did not use caffeine in the day before. So you have to plan this when you're going to use this. If you know tomorrow I'm going to I must stay awake very long. So the day before, don't use any caffeine to have the most benefit of the caffeine during the moment you need it, because otherwise you will, if you drink it regularly, body will get accustomed to it, a sort of immunity, and you will need higher doses to get the same effect. So I would say don't use caffeine often like I do. I only get my caffeine through tea, but when I use something like this, like these energy drinks or caffeine pills, I really get the effect from it. I will talk about it within a minute. Another thing is, like I said, this is one of those smaller caffeine boosters that you can have, and it's just like you see, it's a small boost, and every 2 or 3 hours, take one of these boosts, and you will have more effect to stay awake. Another thing is caffeine pills. These little buggers, every of these little buggers should have the equivalent of 60 cups of coffee, I think, but I'm not really sure about it anymore. But nonetheless, this is a lot of caffeine in just one pill, and I always keep these in my everyday carry. Why? Because sometimes at my work there could be a certain problem and I need to stay for longer time. I once at my work, because there was a huge problem with on the work site, and I had to stay in essential do double shift and stay awake for twice as long as I should work on a day. So that on those moments, I would use these caffeine. So one of these caffeine pills to keep me alert and stay awake for a much longer time. So yeah, that way caffeine pills are very handy. But yet again, do not take this regularly. Only take this in emergency situations, because I can tell you, I I used this, I had to use this many times, and I can assure you, your health and your psychology will deteriorate very fast if you use this very often. So that's also the reason why I start to work less days in a week, and I feel much more alert, vital, more energyful than I have to be dependent on this kind of substances. So yeah, caffeine pills are very handy, but use them very, very wisely. So yeah, another thing, these were the yeah. Another thing is, I would say, tea, but it also depends on what tea, because some teas can contain sweet stuff within it, and that sweet stuff could have a sugar crash. So I would say use something that is tea made out of roasted chestnut, and yeah, that's less because it has fats from the nuts in it, and also no sugar bits mixed within it. You will have a little bit of the caffeine, and also from the movement from making the tea, the anticipation to getting a cup of tea. So really depends on what sort of tea you're going to use to get a little bit caffeine and not doze off, because sometimes tea is used to get to sleep better. But I would say use some how do you say it, tea that can have a little bit discomfort, like this chestnut tree. It's not the most tastiest tea, but because it's not that tasty, it will keep you a little bit awake, because you don't really enjoy it that much, in contrary to teas that you use to sleep that are more sweet or have some relaxation herbs in them. So you need to watch out with those if you're going to use this. One more, and this might sound a little bit BDSM like, but hot sauce. And I do not say you need to drink the hot sauce, but it can be used like if you start to doze off, have a little bit of hot sauce that your tongue is feeling hot or like on fire, and that will keep you a little bit awake. But there is another trick that the military use, and that is take some hot sauce and rub it not in your eyes but under the eyes, and that burning sensation will go against the eyes that will close. It will have the burning sensation that will keep you a little bit awake. So yeah, a little bit of hot sauce on the tongue, and rubbing under the eyes, not in the eyes, by the way, because otherwise you cannot see anything for so many minutes. So yeah, that's another trick you can do. It's not really a substance, but it's a little trick that you can do even with leftover hot sauce. Uh, so yeah, that was my video about how to stay awake in the field with and without substances that anybody can get their hands on, because yeah, sometimes in the military or in some parts of the world they use hard drugs like amphetamines, crack, or cocaine, or whatever substances that is illegal and hard to get. These were the substances that you can get as a regular person. I would not advise to get something stronger than this, because you will get dependent on it. You can get an addiction, and yeah, your body will not. If you really take the really hard stuff, your body will just, the neurons will not work the same way. So use it wisely, use it sparingly, and try to do it as long with as you can without the need of substance to get more healthy and have a better, clear mind. So yeah, I've talked long enough. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video. And look, if you're interested in my book, look in the beneath in the description. If you got any other tips to that you use that I have not mentioned in here that anyone can do, please let me know in the comments. I'm always eager to learn new stuff. So see you in the next video. Cheers.